Welcome to Getting Home Sourced with G. Your one-stop shop for all things real estate. Gianno is your go-to guy with over 25 years of experience in the game, serving up the insider scoop on buying, selling, and investing in two of the hottest markets, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Cabo, Mexico. Whether you're looking to score the perfect home, seal the deal on a sale, or dive into the world of international investments, G's got the tips, tricks, and swagger to make it happen. Remember, in Nevada, the smart choice is the right choice. And when it comes to Cabo, you better go oceanside with Cabo G. If you were looking for a quiet, tranquil show about real estate, this ain't it. Gianno has this thing called passion. Let's unleash the beast. This is Welcome to Getting Home Sourced. And now your host, Gianno.
Hey, what do you say? We got another rockin' show here at Getting Home Sourced with G, as I'm your host, Gianno. And of course, I like to start out by saying, as I always do, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you're listening around the world. I greatly appreciate you listening, of course. As I always say, you guys are the engine that drives the Ferrari. I just sit in the seat, turn the key, and then off we go. And that's how our show rolls. Really appreciate everybody listening in. And of course, for my newbies, thank you so much. That's my first timers. Thank you so much for listening in. And of course, my repeat offenders, love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening, supporting me, and engaging. Love you guys. And of course, how to get a hold of me? Well, I got two ways to do it. You can go on my website, www.vegashomesource.com, where of course I have my newsletter. And you can sign up for that if you haven't already. Check out what I got going on. Free MLS access for both Vegas and Cabo. And you can get a hold of me toll free, 888-528-2810. And for my domestic users, just put in 702, same number, and you're ready to go. And for my internationals, of course, you can always talk to my assistant/associate.
Hello.
Miss G. She'll answer most of the questions or all the questions that you may have. And after that, feel free to send me an email. Come through if I can't get a hold of you based upon our hours. Don't worry. I always return a call the next day. We'll get in touch. We'll make it happen and get it going. But for this show today, we're going to be a little bit worldly, right? So that's the key word here, the world of real estate. Why? Because the world's turning. We're going into the fourth quarter, the last 3 months of the year. And obviously, all the countries are getting affected right now in real estate with some situations that are going on, both politically and unfortunately with military action and what have you. And of course, the world does people like it's getting turned upside down, right? But in this instance, I want to really kind of tackle on how political differences or political influence affect real estate, because you know how the economies in the stock market do that, but also political as well. I'm not a political show, so I'm not really going to focus too much on that, but I will share and show you why people behave and think the way they do, which in turn basically leads them into decision making where you're buying either domestically where you live or internationally where you want to go, and we'll get into that. So without further ado, I really want to cover first off is the short-term rentals, because I think it's important to understand that in the quote-unquote world of real estate, that between the United States, Mexico, Europe, Asia, Middle East, Southeast Asia, political climates are obviously having an effect on where international and domestic buyers want to buy, right? So with that, we live and we want to invest, we want to thrive, we want to succeed, and we make real estate that goal, that push for wealth building, because we always hear all the time wealth building. How do you wealth build? Well, you wealth build in real estate, right? So But where do you go? How is that a tool? How does that affect me? Well, with wealth building, again, you have the commercial sector, you have the residential sector, and again, you have to really understand how it plays into your portfolio, whether you're talking to an attorney, whether you're talking to a financial advisor, a financial planner, but more importantly, talking to
And the correct
your
answer is
real estate agent and your real estate broker, however you want to call it that way, because you have to ask yourself how, what, where, when, why to make an acquisition in real estate or even to sell, right? So those are the important factors on behavioral thinking, how we go about doing things, because we need to have those answers to make us satisfied and fulfilled in what we're doing. So we feel good about what we're doing, where a lot of times people are forced, they don't feel good, and then they have sour grapes at back end and it's just doesn't work out and they're very upset about the process. And that's what a real estate agent and or broker's responsibility is to make sure that you're guiding, advising that person through the process. So this way you want to feel good about what you're doing because you're getting all the data, you're getting all the information, you're getting the facts, and then it's up to you or your family or your spouse, what have you, that are going to make that decision with you, right? So, but again, in covering short-term rentals, I think it's important to understand that that is becoming more and more popular through the years, and it's not so much in the United States as much as it is all over, because a lot of times most people are now getting priced out of hotels where they once thought were cheap that are now expensive. So the attitude is that, well, why would I want to go to a hotel, pay double, triple the price of what I used to pay when, and that's the case, I could take a family or, you go with your significant other or a spouse, what have you, and then you go into like a short-term rental, house, condo, townhome, mansion, whatever you want to call it, because really people more and more are traveling overseas. They're all moving around. They're migrating, checking out certain countries, certain cultures. And again, they get turned off by the hotels. So what happens with that? That's great for a host or owner if you're hosting a short-term rental, or if you're the owner of a short-term rental and then you have somebody else host it for you and manage it, what have you. But that's where you're having appreciation, because now you're getting between 4 to 5% appreciation across the board for short-term rentals on the average. Okay. And that's taking into consideration everything altogether, which I found kind of interesting. So on a worldwide scale, when you average it out, of course, you're going to have higher percentages and lower percentages in different areas of the world. But again, the world of real estate, right? We want to take it as an average as a whole. And you're looking, let's just say, cap it off at 5%. Still great return. And you're still, that's just even on the short-term rental income, not taking into consideration what the value is going to be of the property down the road when you turn around and you wind up selling that property, right? So that's key to take a look at. Now, again, not a political show, but in touching bases on a political climate level, which we're experiencing all over the world now, because everything's kind of ramped up a little bit. Let's face facts, right? I mean, this is a real deal show. We talk street talk. We're giving it to you fresh. But with the political climate, and more important, a weakening U.S. dollar due to what? Tariffs and national debt, right? National debt meaning here in the United States, international buyers and investors are now seeing buying commercial and residential assets more appealing to hold and to purchase here in the U.S. because with stronger currencies like the euro, which obviously they're in 20 countries in the European Union, right? And then you also have the yen in Japan and the ruble in Russia. This leads to effective buyer discounts, right? And that's what you're going to get because your dollar's stronger. You're going to get more value. So hence, why not make an acquisition in the U.S.? Now, since the currency of the UAE, right, United Arab Emirates, so now they're pegged to the U.S. dollar. So if you didn't know that, Dubai has the U.S. dollar in play for acquisitions. Yeah. Now Dubai properties even become more affordable for European buyers as well as in Asia, as the demand I see is increasing starting end of third quarter, right? So really end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, you're seeing an increase in activity, especially in that corridor. So And Dubai right now, as we know, I spoke about this in past shows, that people are looking for Dubai to get U.S. buyers to go out and purchase in Dubai. However, you're seeing more now of the regional buyers and investors and internationals in that area taking advantage of the US dollar being soft, and then they go in there and make their acquisitions. So, hey, that's where you got to go. That's where the deals are. Know your market, know where you're going. And that's why I talk about the how, what, where, when, and why. You have to make sure you have those answers before you move forward, because that gives you clarity and it gives you strength as a buyer, but it also gives you strength as a seller as well, because you know what you have to do when you're getting the data from, again, your attorney, your financial advisor, and more importantly, like I said, person like myself, real estate agent, real estate broker, to go in there and help you out. Now, in regards to my neighbors in the north, okay, that we talk about Canada. So now, again, political climate over here in the U.S., which is creating a lot of tension with my north neighbors of the Canadians. Okay, so now there's already a shift in the behavior among how Canadians are now thinking about 2026. And what does that mean? So now a study that I came across not too long ago showed that over half of the Canadian property owners that own property in the U.S. are basically just looking to sell. They just want to dump. They want to get out. They're tired of what's going on. The tariffs over here that we put, unfortunately, on Canada, they're getting hit pretty hard. So now what does that mean? That means that they're looking at other avenues, right? So 2/3 of the people that are looking to sell, which are Canadians, have cited concerns over the U.S. government policies and instability. And because of that, now they're looking at, believe it or not, Mexico and in their own backyard to reinvest. And I think this is really strong showing, because I do see a lot of Canadians looking at, again, Los Cabos, for example, as a viable outlet, because, again, being in the Southwest and being on the West Coast per se, a lot of Canadians have focused their attentions in Phoenix, in basically New Mexico, Nevada, and maybe a little bit in Utah, southern Utah. But now their attitude is, hey, you know what? We can get a better deal and not have to deal with the nonsense, since now Mexico and Canada are now really buddy and partnering up with each other to make their economy stronger. So now you have Canadians that want to cash out in the U.S., take that money and put it down into Mexico, and specifically Los Cabos, because I see a lot of people, the main cities, Montreal, Winnipeg, Vancouver, and Calgary, as coming down and focusing on buying and investing and making money, because they understand what's going on in Cabo. So, and I've dealt with a lot of Canadian buyers, both here in the U.S. and in Los Cabos. Some people are like, half and half about it, but most people are very passionate and they've already made their decisions and what they're doing, and they feel good about it. And that's really what it comes down to. So, without further ado, let me take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Have you been waiting for your oasis in the desert but don't know where to start? Looking for that second home or relocation home to escape and oversee those majestic mountains with beautiful palm trees blowing in the wind? Then Vegas G is here for you with keys in hand to make sure your luxury getaway is your place to stay. Contact Gianno today at 888-528-2810, and remember, your Las Vegas getaway is just a phone call away. Make the call now and come see for yourself what Vegas has to offer you.
Hey, what do you say? Thank you so much for sticking around on the second half of Getting Home Source with G, as I'm your host, Gianno. As I always say, I love you guys. Love you. Thank you for tuning in. I'm hoping this is kind of making sense for you, because it's certainly making sense for me. Because, again, when you take the world on a whole and you have to think like that, you have to think outside the box, because a lot of times it's also like talking to people for the first time. You have to get an understanding, and you want to understand and learn about their wants and needs as well as my wants and needs. And that's how you put the deals together, right? So with the U.S. administration now making an effort really to have conflicts end in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, which they really are, folks. I mean, whatever, regardless of what you're hearing, we have to end all these wars, obviously, because it's getting ridiculous. Of course, we know this. But, with the current administration here, they're doing their best. We could see increased travel and investment activities in the regions that are having problems, right? So that's typically a no-brainer. Everything stops, things calm down, everything's peaceful. What happens now? We re-engage in those regions that are getting unfortunately roughed up because people want to engage and get into that region to purchase because they know there's value, there's money, and there's investment opportunities. However, the aggressive diplomatic style of the U.S. president, which is Donald Trump, could create a destabilized global geopolitical situation for other countries that could trigger investors both here domestically and internationally to target traditional stable real estate markets like the UK, right? So in England, Germany, and Switzerland. So, since the housing market overall in the United States is uneven, because if you look at it across the board, you're seeing that in the Sun Belt states going from Florida to Georgia to Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Nevada, those markets are actually slumping to where there's a lot more inventory than ever before because now you have a just a glutton of properties that are on the market again as of the show that you're hearing now live is that we have over 13,000 homes average that in Las Vegas alone that are on the market. So that is a buyer's market when you have that situation where properties are sitting for at least 4 to 6 months, right? So that's a buyer situation. So anything under 4 months is usually a seller's market, right? So right now, I've said in the past before, it's negotiating markets because there's a lot of buyers that are sitting on the sidelines. And unless the seller meets the buyer demands, hence the negotiation tactics, buyers are sitting around and they're going to wait to get their fill when the time comes. But again, when you look at the northern territories like, New York State, you have Massachusetts, you have Illinois, you have Minnesota, you have Washington State, all those areas up in the northern territories, Midwest and northern territories, hot markets, right? Because those are seller markets because basically properties are flying off the shelf over there. And so with that being the case, this puts the international investors in a great position because now they see the map like a chart per se. So now you know how to go ahead and invest properly because you have the information. Now you know what's best for you as an international investor, not to mention a domestic investor, because you also have domestic people that are looking around and targeting certain cities because they can live in Florida. They know that it's getting saturated, let's say, down there. So they want to look outside the box. Where do I go that I can be as a buyer to buy property, hold it, turn around, and rent it out? Because you could see more and more, a lot of the U.S. hedge funds are coming in bulk. And what are they doing? They're buying, multifamily, which are like 200 unit, 300 unit plus apartments because they know they can cash flow big money on 300 units or better, really. And then you also have the onesie twosie, the single families or the duplexes or townhomes and what have you. So you're starting to see that as well. But U.S. citizens are focusing and increasing their interest now once again. Now, this is what I found kind of interesting when I was doing some research is that you're looking at Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, as I was quite surprised that these three countries that actually Americans are looking outside the box and getting into because, as I've been mentioning before, people have been pushing Portugal, Spain, and Italy as the landing spots for Americans. But I think now they're realizing that market is getting saturated in those countries and particular cities that they want to be in. And so now they're looking elsewhere. So again, I really found it to be kind of interesting. Canada out of all places. But again, I guess that makes sense because it's right over the border. So not that bad. But when you're looking at Australia and New Zealand, very, very interesting over there. You have to keep an eye on Australia and see what's happening down under over there. So, which I think is great because right now, again, you have to understand 2026 is coming. And what happens when it's a new year? It's all about the year of change because every year we're thinking changes for the better, right? Change could sometimes be stagnant, but most of the changes for the better because we know where we're going. We see what's happening, how the year is going to end off over here. And that's great investment strategies for real estate hunters, right? So the real reason here in the United States, and I want to talk about this too, because I think it's important to understand why everybody talks about affordability, housing crisis, and what's going on with the pricing and the interest rates and what have you. But realistically, it's new home builds. New home builds is the real reason why we have a high housing shortage or margins where prices are up and people can't afford because of what? Because of labor costs and construction costs, which is caused by what? Tariffs and immigration changes. Not to mention the fact that even though the federal land development and they're deregulating to increase the opportunities of supply, but still we have to deal with the fact that infrastructure is a big challenge right now, and that's affecting everything. And because of that, now it backs up the building process because of delays, whether it be permitting, whether it's getting the materials, whatever the lumber, concrete, steel, what have you, aluminum, all these things that come into play. This is a cause of why with new construction, everything goes up. And then, of course, you have the exterior factors, and this becomes a little bit dicey, right? So the supply of homes right now, for the most part, will not outpace demand. I mean, I could tell you that right now it's not going to happen because I see a lot of people on social media platforms and they're up to their old same old tactics and tricks and basically forcing people. How many times you heard somebody saying you have to buy and sell because of it's like scare tactics? I call it scare tactics, but they want you to buy and sell. Yeah. They're focusing on the interest rates and confusing them with the Fed rates because remember, folks, I told you the Fed rate cuts that are taking place here in the United States is way different than a mortgage rate cut. Again, they try to align with each other, but people think that the Fed rate cut drops a half a point or a percent. That means that the mortgage rates are going to drop a percent.
And
not the case, but unfortunately, you have people going out there and they're basically confusing people. So now, you have that. You have, there's going to be a housing crash. Now we have rates are going to fall. Now we have prices are going to drop. And if we all had a crystal ball and figuring out like what was going to happen, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? Because we already know the answer. But the problem is that we don't have a crystal ball. And for that reason, we would all be in a better and different place if we did. But just you have to know what you're getting into, get the information, because where are you getting your source from? When you're listening to all these people, are they reliable? How do you vet them out? How do you know that what they're talking about is true, right? At least when I talk and you're listening to me on the show, I'm giving you facts, I'm giving you data, and I'm also giving you the tools to succeed because at the end of the day, why? Because you're having access to my MLS, you're seeing the prices, you're seeing what's going on. And if you've been with me from the beginning of the show now, which, gosh, I mean, I don't even know what are we doing, like a year and 2 months right now? Okay, so with that being the case, you can see the trend, you can see the prices. If you're targeting certain areas that you like, you're seeing prices either go up, go down, shifting depending upon the time frames that you're looking at. But I could tell you, just like in the United States, even with Cabo, you have a lot of properties on the market. And what happens because of political factors and conditions, it's a buyer's market in Cabo as well. So for internationals and for basically people in the U.S. and for Canada and also for the locals, mainland Mexico that are coming in that want to invest, there are great deals in Mexico. Regardless of what you're hearing, there are great deals in Mexico where you know how to find them. And that's where it takes a great agent to basically have that knowledge, information, and put it out there for you. And that's what I do for you, right? So at least you can source me out to know that I'm giving you reliable information. It's factual, it's real data, and it's live because you're seeing it just like I see it. So that's how I can validate myself and letting you guys know that, hey, what I'm saying to you is pretty much, from the horse's mouth, it's going to be the real deal, right? So, but at the end of the day, look, I want to tell people it's important because my mission statement here is when I do the show, it's simple content, it's community, it's code, and it's commerce, right? And this is the only strategy that's important to me when it comes to my clients, okay, which people are listening, existing clients, future clients, right? Customers, and soon to be customers and clients. So then you have all of you because you're part of my show. You're my family. So I don't look at you as a customer or client. I look at everybody as my family, an extension of the family where I'm talking to each and every one of you and your own pace, own time and understanding, right? Because you get the tools to see for yourself, right? Like I just mentioned before, the free MLS access, the newsletters. You're getting to see my concierge service, everything that's there buttoned up for you, and all the properties that are online to feel free to peruse and look at. Not just my listings, but just everything, because I'm not going to short sell anybody and just show you certain sector. You're going to see everything. And then you cipher through it, and that's where you do your searches. And if you need help with that, that's why you contact me, and I create a more specific search that caters to your needs, right? So then you ask yourself, who stands out to you? Because not having a voice or a choice, or just being a head count, is that really what you want? I don't think so, right? Or do you need or want someone to lead, guide, and stand out, and more importantly, listening to you? And folks, look, at the end of the day, my quote is always, a brand is a promise, but a great brand is a promise well kept. And I feel here at Getting Home Sourced and Vegas Home Source and Cabo G, all my brands are great brands, as I always deliver on my promises, because I keep my promises. I hold myself to a higher standard, and that's why we stand, and I say we, in French, but we stand together to lead, guide, and grow, because what? We do it together. So, on that note, I want to say thank you so much. I love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, we're just going to have more great shows, and I got some really fun stuff coming up soon. And again, just to go down the road, I will be in Cabo November 3rd to November 17th, so I want you to stay tuned for that. And then also, I'll be in New York City from November 26th to December 6th. So if you're in Los Cabos in the end of, well, let's just say the beginning of November to mid-November, and then from New York City, end of November, first week of December, I want to put it out there. I'm going to keep reminding everybody about that. So in case you don't see me here in Vegas and I'm in Cabo, or if I'm not in Cabo, I'm in New York, we're moving around again. I want you to reach out to me. Love to meet with you in person, and whatever I could do, as I always say, I'm at your service. So until then, take care. God bless. Talk to you next week.
You have just listened to Getting Home Sourced with your radio host, Gianno Buonaguro. This podcast is a registered trademark and may not be reproduced without the express written consent of VegasHomeSource.com. For additional information about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, call or text Gianno toll-free at 888-528-2810 or visit his website at VegasHomeSource.com. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.